Welcome back to the DiVUlged podcast. Today I'm with
Madison.
Hi, Joe.
and I'm Josie from Legal Studies, and today we're talking about the Menendez case. Now you've probably already heard about it, what with like the recent news in the media and certain documentaries, series on Netflix, and in this case, children of the Hollywood executive Jose Menendez and his wife Mary Louise Kitty Menendez killed their parents by shooting them fatally on August 20th, 1989. Their names were Eric, who was 18, and Lyle Menendez, who was 21 at the time. And they killed them at their Beverly Hills home. Later, they were convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to murder and sentenced to life in prison. Now, the crime scene, unlike some other cases, the crime scene itself is not particularly abnormal, but it's the events before and after the trial, and just in general surrounding the trial and the media attention it got, that makes this case so special.
Okay, so we'll get into the before and after the murder later, but for right now, let's talk about the crime scene. So, Jose and Kitty were killed in the living room. Jose had been shot 5 times, while Kitty had been shot 6 times all over. Later, after the shooting, a neighbor described hearing shrieks of a young boy curled up on the home's front lawn, and that was later identified coming from Eric. And then at 11:47 p.m. the same night, LAPD reported a call from the Menendez brothers at the home. The brothers said they had been out that evening and returned home to the crime scene. So what happened before is what really unravels the true story to this case. If you want to talk about that.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot going on. So, in 1987, about 2 years before the murders, the brothers kind of get in a little bit of trouble. They're already kind of troublemakers, with Lyle having been kicked out of Princeton for plagiarism. And during the period where he was home in California, he and Eric vulgarized 2 homes which belonged to friends of their father. And they were only turned in because a friend who was involved in the first robbery was cut out of the second and then turned them in. And this is special because Eric took the fall for both of them, and he was assigned probation and mandatory counseling. And this is where he meets his therapist, Dr. Jerome Oziel, and in which he signed a confidentiality waiver so Oziel could share anything he learned with Jose and Kitty. This is relevant to like certain testimony during their first trial, where they omit some things. They confessed some things that they omitted during their therapy sessions with Oziel, and this just provides context for why they might have omitted it. Additionally, there's something kind of suspicious that happened like 8 months before the murder, where Eric and his friend Craig wrote a screenplay called Friends, which detailed a scenario where a wealthy young man kills his parents for money, which is relevant to the period after the murders, where both of Eric and Lyle, after they had disposed of their parents, they went on this like huge spending spree with like spending nearly like $500,000 to $700,000, including like for Lyle buying a Porsche, a Rolex, and a restaurant in Princeton. And I personally won't get too much into like their arrest. Madison will, but it's only 6 months after the murders that Lyle is arrested, and Eric turns himself in around 1990.
I do have a question. So you said 6 months, like this whole case, I've heard of it before. I never really watched too much into it. Like Netflix thing, I didn't want to watch that because I felt like it'd be not fully like everything there.
Yeah.
But you said after like 6 months after they killed the parents when they got arrested.
Mm-hmm.
So what did he get arrested for?
Well,
So that was like the murder. I feel like he got arrested for something else. Then they came back for the murder.
No, we'll get into it,
Okay.
but they did confess to a couple people, and then they later came to the police about it.
Yeah,
So.
that's what did him in, I guess.
Yeah, the guilt.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So, speaking of which, I'll actually talk about one of their confessions. So, Eric had a friend named Craig Signorelli, and Eric confessed about the murders only 12 days after they took place. And a month later, around a month later, Craig went to the police and told them what Eric confessed. And then he agreed that the next time he saw Eric, he would wear a wire to record their conversation. But when they met up, Eric had changed the story of what happened. And then they also confessed to their therapist that Josie briefly mentioned earlier, Dr. Oziel. He was Eric's therapist, actually. And Eric confessed to him in October, around 2 months after the murders. And then they both convinced Lyle to come see Dr. Oziel as well, and convinced them to videotape their therapy sessions. Neither Lyle nor Eric ever disclosed the fact that they were abused to Dr. Oziel before being arrested, but they did confess to Dr. Oziel. And then this is where it gets a little confusing. Dr. Oziel's lover came forth and said that the doctor asked her to eavesdrop on a session between him, Eric, and Lyle, during which she heard Eric and Lyle discussing the murders. And then in March, so several months after the murders, she went and told the police, and they searched Dr. Oziel's home with a warrant. And then, not long after she went to the police, Lyle was arrested in March of 1990 outside of their family home, and then Eric turned himself in 3 days later.
So the only reason they got caught for this was because they told too many people.
Pretty
That's
much.
what I'm seeing right now.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And clear, you said they got abused, all that. I know that bit, a little bit of the story. We'll get into that here in a bit, but I don't know, it's kind of hard still just.
To believe? Or,
Yeah, the whole thing, like.
Is it about them confessing so many to so many people?
So many people. Yeah, like in their mind, they know like this is only going to end one way. I don't know. That'd probably go through my mind if I did such a thing. But
Well,
I guess maybe the guilt too,
maybe.
the share.
Or they thought these were trusted people. I mean, Eric confessed to his friend Craig, and then the therapist, which they probably might have assumed that because of the confidentiality waiver they signed, maybe the therapist just weren't expecting that therapist to ask somebody to eavesdrop, especially his lover. So, I mean, under the patient confidentiality relationship, therapists can't really confess for murders that have happened in the past, only for murders they would potentially do in the future. So, it could have been just a trust issue.
I don't envy that. Sitting there like him talking about, yeah, I killed my parents. I feel like conversation is just like, oh, okay.
It'd make you kind of sick.
You knew what you were getting into when you signed up for the job, so.
Yeah, okay. Perhaps.
But it was only they signed up for the counseling because it was mandatory for burglary.
Yeah, that was a part of his what would that be called? His punishment for burglarizing those homes.
Yeah, I
was
thought we had
probation.
talked about that, him killing his parents. I don't think that got signed up for, but
Yeah, but I think Oziel, I heard he was very interested. He asked them if he could tape their confessions.
I know we're kind of jumping a little bit, but were those tapes used in the
I think we'll
case?
see in the machine which
We'll just have to wait and find out.
Oh, might as well get to the next part then.
Okay, well, they were arrested, like we last said, and then nearly 4 years after the murders, their first trial began in 1993, and they were tried together, but they had separate juries for both of them because some evidence was admissible for one brother but not the other, and then Judge Weisberg was the judge. So they both testified about the abuse, and at the time of the trial, sexual abuse against boys was, quote, common, underreported, underrecognized, and undertreated, and that's just a traditional gender norm. But they did testify to it, and this is just a trigger warning. We all are going to be talking about some of their testimonies, but Lyle stated that his father had begun sexually abusing him at the age of 6. This ended when he was 8 years old, but Eric testified that it never ended for him and continued all the way up until the day of the murders. And the brothers claim to have confronted their parents about the abuse the night of the murders and a couple days before the murders, but on the night of the murders they confronted them, and they claimed that their father was going to kill them, which is what led them to kill their parents in self-defense. That is their claim. And then relatives, friends, acquaintances of the Menendez family testified to the claim of the abuse against the brothers. None of them ever saw the sexual abuse, but they did see and testify to some of the physical abuse that they endured. So here are a couple of their testimonies. A cousin testified to situations he found odd, like where Jose would force the brothers to go to the master bedroom with him or shower with him, and the cousin was not allowed to go near the room when those situations occurred. And then a different cousin testified to a time Lyle, when he was 8, told her where him and his father touched each other and indicated where that was. The prosecutors argued that the abuse does not give them the right to murder their parents. Also, that the brothers never told their therapist about the abuse, but they told him about the murders. And then this trial had a lot of media coverage, but ultimately it ended in a hung jury, which means that one or more of the jurors disagreed with the jurors' judgment, and then the jurors indicated that what threw the panel into disarray was the question of how seriously the brothers had been abused and the extent to which the abuse justified their actions. And that was the end of the first trial.
Oh, you have something?
This is a very weird position in the law to be in. Like being the prosecutor and being the jury is like clearly like from the family members, they testified. We don't know if it went on for when they were in their later years, but in their early years, there was a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And obviously said that killing them does not, for the abuse and all that, which, yeah, law, you can't just kill someone like that, but still, it's such a weird position because there's a law and there's like your personal, like how you would feel you're in that situation.
Yeah.
It's a difficult, like, I wouldn't know where, if I was a jury member, I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult case. Just debating, because the abuse was and it felt, reading about it is so intense, and it's one of the worst forms of abuse you can do to a child. But it's also, they like murder
Especially
their
your own
parents.
kid.
Yeah, it's horrifying. But I mean, they murdered the parents, and there wasn't a clear sign of like there wasn't a clear like self-defense, like what you would usually think is self-defense, because they weren't directly attacking them at the time of the murder.
Yeah, they were just in the living room, like watching TV. But I mean, if I was in their position, I wouldn't. You're not as prepared whenever something is happening to you, so to prepare for something before it happens again.
Yeah, they said that the father was trying to hurt them, like kill them or whatever. Clearly, not sure if that was true or not in that situation. They could just be saying that because there's no other witnesses other than themselves. But like I said, overall, at least for this first case, like, I don't know. If I was a jury, I wouldn't know what to.
Well, what they said was after they confronted their father, they were scared that he was going to kill them so that their family secret didn't get out and people knew, because he was like a popular producer. Yeah.
I mean, clearly the family secret's not well hidden with other family members, which.
But clearly they didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, that's one thing. Like, also, we, 2020 vision. We know like maybe guys should have maybe said something.
Yeah, I
agree.
agree.
Maybe this could never all occurred, but like that's with hindsight.
That's true.
But
and also,
I don't know, man. If I was their cousin, I'm like, man, that's weird. That's like.
Would you tell somebody?
Well, one of their cousins did tell Kitty, which they thought was, a trusted adult. but she really kind of knew about the abuse anyways. So
She would have there. There's one thing she'll have to know.
Yeah,
There's no way you can hide that from your significant other. I don't know. It's just
yeah.
I don't know really what to think of this. Like I said, I knew a little ahead of what some of this was about. Never really dived too much deep into it. It was like he said, jurors hung because they're like,
Mhm.
I don't know, bro. I'm like, yeah, I'll probably be in the same boat. Like this is a weird case.
Yeah.
I don't know which is right or which is wrong.
I definitely agree. And it kind of gets worse in the second trial, where there's some key differences. It occurred through 1995 to 1996, so it kind of took place over 2 years, 1 to 2 years. And they kept the same judge, Judge Wiseman. But this time, a lot of the evidence of the alleged sexual abuse was withheld, so all those testimonies from their families was not in this new trial. And like I said, he ruled that the 6 witnesses who had testified in the first trial were irrelevant to the second trial and would not be allowed to testify. He ruled that the parents' alleged psychological mistreatment was also irrelevant as well. And while the defense presented 5 experts in the first trial, they were only allowed one expert in the second trial. So those are some key differences there. And they were also not allowed to present the testimony of Dr. William Vickery, who was the psychiatrist who had treated Eric since 1990. And he was only allowed to testify as a rebuttal witness regarding Eric's anxiety disorders. So he was testifying kind of against them in the second trial as opposed to maybe the first one. And perhaps most significantly is that Lyle Menendez was not allowed to testify in the second trial because in the first he had asked a girlfriend to falsely claim she was sexually assaulted by Jose, and he also asked a friend to claim he provided the brothers with a gun for protection. So he's completely cut out of testifying for the second case, and it's only Eric who can testify. And finally, on February 16th of 1996, Weisberg ruled that there was not enough evidence that the brothers were in imminent danger when they killed their parents. So the self-defense argument that the defense attorneys in the first trial were trying to argue did not hold up to this one. And like I said, the imperfect self-defense jury instruction that was read to the first jury was not read to the second jury in this trial. So they were not instructed to that defense to be able to make a informed decision off of that defense. And ultimately, they were convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to murder, and sentenced to life in prison, each of them without possibility of parole. I believe it was only the evidence of the brief testimony of abuse they had suffered that saved them from death penalty. But as we all know, the Menendez case has gained a lot more attention in the recent years.
I do actually have a question before we kind of go on, because you're about to talk new evidence has came up over the years.
Yeah.
What, as I know about the second case, like at all, but why do they cut so much of that out from like the first case? Like all this extra information.
I believe they just thought it was irrelevant because what hung the first jury was like the extent of the abuse and everything. And I believe that might have been a factor in Weisberg, because this is just all Judge Weisberg cutting out the witnesses and everything. So it might have been like the fact that hung the first jury, that he thought it might not come to a conclusion in the second one as well. So because it's all about like convicting them for the murder of their parents, and he didn't believe the self-defense argument was good enough. And the only thing that stands for the self-defense argument is their alleged sexual and psychological abuse. So that might be why.
See, like the self-defense one, I get it because there's no one to argue their word. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with there on that one because you just don't know. It's just their word against no one else's. But at the same time, like I get why you said, because unfair to make it a hung jury again, but I feel like still like all the extra stuff gives so much like more content, like context to what went down.
I agree. That's
Like
like
the second case, shut book, easy. First case, whoa now guys, there's a little more going on here, a lot of weird stuff, you know. I mean, and they did still kill two people, their parents,
yeah,
so they should still be, you know, punished for that. But at the same time, they're still like from the law standpoint. At the same time, for me, like a person on for my heart, and all that's like that's so terrible they were going through. Like they still should get punished. Like don't get that wrong. They should still be punished for what they did. They killed two people. I get that, but there's so much more to it. And just to cut that all out,
I agree.
I feel like that simplify. I get. I mean, there's a whole reason to simplify it, but you doing that just I
I
don't
feel
know.
like it's not a fair trial at that point.
Yeah, because you make it seem like they just killed them for no
Money.
reason.
Multiple instances.
Yeah, basically because the whole spinning thing, which,
Yeah.
mind you, that's pretty weird. I think they probably knew that they were going to jail for this, so they said, "The hell with it, let's have some fun before we go to jail." That's
Yeah.
what I imagined that was about. But yeah, like I said, if you were the jury in the second case, oh yeah, done deal.
It really is a shut book deal, and that's like part of like the arguments for making for like a release or at least a possibility for parole, which we'll get into later.
Mhm.
But it's just like the fact that that evidence, which was so damning in the first trial, was withheld in the second trial. That makes people think it was not fair at all, like you said, and everything.
Mhm.
So
Well, I mean, I can understand why Lyle wasn't allowed to testify
Yeah.
because of those false claims, but I feel like all the other evidence should have been allowed, even if it made the trial lengthier or a hung jury again. Like, that's the point. Then retrial it again, get a new jury.
Yeah, but I feel like, see, that's when you like lose me because they keep trying to retrial it so they can get the conviction that they want. Because you know, in the day it's up to.
Well, not
jury-
necessarily. It's
well-
just so the jury all agrees.
Yeah, but like I said, they knew because what they were trying to do, it kept getting a hung jury. What they wanted the punishment for, it kept getting a hung jury because all that evidence. But once they cut out all that extra stuff, they got it easily. So I can see why you say unfair jury, unfair trial, because I don't know. I don't know what the right answer here is. Well, yeah. You guys more into the law, all that, the law and official, all that. But like, I don't know. I don't know. Just me as a person, I'm like, I feel there's a little too much gray here. It's not black and white.
I agree, and it's also like regular people on the jury. So I mean, your opinion was probably positioned in the jury room. I mean, it's such a complicated case with the evidence being presented and everything. I mean, definitely agree with you. That's all my opinion. But
This is all just opinions.
we're not speculating at all or anything, just to be clear. Oh, and I do actually want to go back to your whole point about them spending everything, like believing they wouldn't be caught. I wonder if it's also part of like Hollywood culture, because they've grown up with a very rich. I mean, their father was a Hollywood executive. I mean, he's a very rich man. I wonder if that's just their lifestyle and the Hollywood culture is just excessive spending, or just like natural spending.
I feel it can be both.
Okay, be that.
It could be bits of both. Like maybe this family just spends money. The rich Hollywood family probably spend a lot of money just in general. They also they're going to jail. They knew they're probably going to go. This is going to get out eventually. So I said it's probably both on the whole spending thing. But I mean, I don't really think so. Got new evidence and all that stuff that's coming up in recent years. So I think we should get to that because, like I said, I just do not know. Like I made my point kind of clear. I thought that the second case was a bit more black and white overall.
Great.
Right, I don't know. Definitely with that evidence being cut out, it makes it a little more sharper in opinion.
Yeah.
But this new evidence kind of like changes that if it's presented in the new hearing they're about to get. So it's two things mainly. A letter from Eric to his cousin had resurfaced in 1988, and his cousin Andy had received it about 8 months before the killings. So it's about around the time Eric had written his play Friends. The letter reads, quote, "It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in," end quote. So obviously he never makes any direct allusions to the abuse, but you can definitely see how a reasonable person would interpret it as alluding to the abuse. In addition to the letter, it's a person this time, Roy Rosello, who came out as a former member of the boy band Menudo, which had been managed by Jose Menendez in the 1980s. And he had alleged that he was raped in the 1980s. And he was a teenager at the time when that band was signed to RCA Records, which, as I said before, Jose Menendez was an executive, and therefore an executive of the boy band Menudo. So that gives more weight to the abuse, which had hung the jury in the first trial, the extent to which had occurred. So this will give more weight to that specific evidence. And in addition to this new evidence, and in consideration of this new evidence, last year on October 24th, the Los Angeles District County Attorney George Gascon formally recommended that Eric and Lyle Menendez, who are now 53 and 56, be resentenced in a new hearing trial. And a rehearing sentence has been confirmed. The law office of Duragos and Duragos told NBCLA that the brothers would be physically present during the resentencing hearing at the Van Nuys Courthouse on March 20th and 21st at 8:30 a.m. at the Van Nuys Courthouse. It was originally set for January 30th and 31st, but postponed because of the fires in LA. But if you want to maybe see how that case is going to go in person, March 20th, 21st, at 8:30 a.m. at the Van Nuys Courthouse in Los Angeles, California. But of course, other people have opinions about this whole case.
I mean, there's not a lot of new evidence really, except for that letter. But like the letter just, like you just said, just solidifies that yeah, there was weird stuff going on. But it's like the same thing. Are they just gonna cut all that extra stuff out? Then this doesn't matter.
I mean, we
You know
don't
what I
know.
mean? Yeah, I mean we don't know till it happens. But like if they cut out all the extra stuff like they did for the second case, there's no point of doing this again because it's just gonna be the same thing. You know what I mean?
I agree, but I think because they're asking for a retrial, I think they recognize that maybe the first and second trial didn't give them a full chance to get paroled.
Mhm.
So they might take. I think they have to take that in consideration when doing their retrial, because why would they call for a retrial if they're not going?
You're not
to
wrong.
just
So
present that evidence.
what punishment? The punishment they should have? I don't know.
I don't know. We
I
might
don't-
see for arguments. For
Yeah, it's
that.
one of the things I don't know. Should they probably get parole? I could see they could argue that.
Definitely, and some people have.
Yeah, I can definitely see them arguing parole. Like,
Well,
I don't know, it comes to how you kind of see it, I guess.
you know, they actually have a law. California has a law for youthful offenders that should be eligible for parole. Guys, I can't talk. Okay, so when they committed their crimes, this is from the attorney that Josie was talking about just a minute ago, but he said that they were younger than 26. State and federal high court decisions have found that the part of the brain responsible for behavior control is not fully mature until a person's mid to late 20s. And California law states that, with few exceptions, people who committed crimes under the age of 26 are, quote, required to have a meaningful opportunity for parole during their natural life. So theoretically, they should be able to get out on that California law, but also, according to resources, they had really good behavior in prison. Like, they even got married, and one of them has a kid. Not biologically, but.
Okay. I'm sorry. You said that. I was just so confused for a second. I'm like, Man, California prisons. I gotta go there if I'm committing a law,
Well, I
which
mean, if
I
they
would not. I'm
got-
not. I'm just saying I'm not. If I was, I gotta go to California. Apparently,
Yeah.
Only if you get married before you go to prison. You can have those
Wait, did they get married
conjugal,
before?
what is that? Conjugal meetings with your spouse?
wait. So one of them get married before?
If you get married, no, they didn't get married before. But if you do, you could technically have a biological child in prison.
Oh my gosh.
You guys didn't know that?
Imagine being conceived
What?
in a prison.
Anyway, that's all I had on that.
Okay.
Yeah, they had really good behavior in prison, and they got married, and
Good for them, I guess.
yeah.
Congratulations to the nuptials.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's
I
pretty
don't
much
understand
all.
it. I don't.
That they can get married in prison?
I clearly just need to
Oh,
go and look more into the California prison and laws here. I don't.
Maybe it's not even California. I don't know. This is a specific
I've never
California.
heard-
it's not specific to California.
You're right. You're right. But that's a good starting place.
Andrew, if you ever get jailed, you can get married in prison.
Yeah.
Probably.
This brings me to my next
Yes,
point.
because my spouse is gonna be so happy with that.
You don't know. Maybe she's a wild child.
Ugh, okay, all right, yeah, go ahead.
A lot of people say that they should get released because another case, Gypsy Rose Blanchard, she got released. The facts aren't exactly the same, but people use that as an argument. Funnily enough, she also got married in prison.
Dang.
I guess you're gonna meet someone
Something
going to
about
prison. I guess.
Those prison people.
You see, I knew that case.
Yeah.
That one.
It's not exactly the same because
Yeah.
she technically didn't do the murder, but people use that as an argument because she recently got released.
Maybe you can set precedent, like with, oh, well, the facts aren't the same, but
Yeah.
like with your parents, like abusing you as a
Well,
child.
I mean, it's technically common law now.
Oh, yeah, you know
Isn't it?
what? Maybe.
Well,
Maybe they have
in
merit.
California. Well,
Is there like any like what people think why they shouldn't be released?
Oh,
Or-
yes, there is. Or not evidence, but some arguments for that. Like one of them comes from Juan Meja, who is now a head deputy for the Los Angeles County District's Attorney Office, and he raised like a concern regarding like his doubts about the new piece of possible evidence in the case, like the letter specifically, and since one of their lawyers had described it as the linchpin in a recent effort to challenge these convictions when they were still debating on if to have a resentencing trial. And he said that, Juan said that since the brothers had a history of fabrication, like with Lyle's alleged efforts to have people lie for the trial, he feared that the brothers hadn't changed in the manner described by Gascon, who had been calling for it. And of course, other people believe that just because you had been abused by your parents doesn't qualify you to be released from prison or to have parole or something. Like they believe in the old saying of like two wrongs don't make it right, you know. So it seems the arguments against releasing it's just more about having justice meted out and everything. Like you can't have this specific case be excluded just because of this. That's what I believe their main argument is.
I mean, I get that. I mean, it's kind of comes down to like, what is your point of view and how you feel on that? Like the whole fabrication of new evidence, possibly sure. Like still go back to the first case and like the evidence that was there. Then the second case that cut it all out. I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like they can bring all the evidence they had originally, and I probably feel the same. They ought to add no new stuff, really. Honestly, I'm probably like, man, get probation or something, or less sentence. Or
Yeah,
something
it's
of
not
that
like they're
nature.
being like released immediately as
Yeah,
a
like
probate trial.
like I said, they still killed people. Their parents, they still need to be punished for that. But the sentencing they got could be lessened or things of that nature. This is what you personally kind of believe on that. And the other point, what like being abused does not mean you
Two
can't-
wrongs don't make a right.
See, that's kind of interesting question. If you're the person who's being wronged, you might be saying it differently. it's good to say that from the outside, from outside the bubble, looking in, like that's wrong. But if you are the person, might
Yeah,
be saying differently.
I
I don't know.
agree.
I don't know just how I view it.
No, you're totally right though. Like CSA is the one of the abuses, the main forms of abuse that like really messes up your brain, like actually physically affects you a lot
Because
and
you're not fully
emotionally.
developed.
Yeah,
Your
and
brain isn't. Yeah.
it's got the highest rates of like violence, like violent behavior, destructive behavior that comes from that. So I think we should definitely keep that on account. And I wonder if they're gonna bring in like experts on this to testify about how CSA can affect you and how the Menendez brothers might have come to the conclusion of killing their parents as a solution, maybe a possible solution.
Hmm.
Yeah. Especially all these years later when they've like sat with that for so long and like you can kind of see. I mean, I'm sure their brain has probably healed a little bit since then. I know like there's resources in prison that like therapy that can help them, understand why. So I think that is a good idea to get an expert on that, but who knows?
Like, and also, we're not trying to say that they should be let off scot free. That's not all we're saying. But there's more to this than just life in prison. You're done. Throw away the key. You know what I mean?
I agree.
Well, I mean, even if they do get released, they haven't got off scotch free.
Yeah,
They've
they're in
been
the
in there
50s
for
now.
3 decades. Yeah.
So
Married.
Well,
Well, they're away from their wives.
It
Isn't that a
stopped.
punishment?
That didn't stop them apparently getting married, but I mean, I don't know. So I do believe they should be retried, just because if that first case never happened, it was just a second case, there probably wouldn't be so much feedback on this.
Mm-hmm.
But since so much evidence, I mean, I know I keep coming back to this, but that's the whole reason I say, yeah, go for it. Because so much was cut out for the second one for them to get charged,
Yeah,
sentenced.
I wonder if that evidence is going to be brought back in.
I imagine it has to. There's no point doing this.
Clearly, this case has been debated a lot. I mean, we even just debated it right here, but I mean, if you're interested in seeing how that goes, it'll be upcoming in just another month. Is that what?
Yeah, March 20th, guys.
But that's all we have for you. Thanks for watching, and tune back in next time.
Peace.